My name is Emily, and I'm 28 years old, living in the heart of Chicago, where the city's pulse hums with ambition, dreams, and the weight of expectations. For the past 18 months, I'd been planning what I thought was my dream wedding to James, the man who made my world feel steady even when it spun too fast. We'd booked the grand ballroom at the Drake Hotel, a Chicago landmark where chandeliers glitter like stars and history whispers from every corner. I'd lie awake at night in our Lincoln Park apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering why the thought of my perfect day left me so hollow. Was this what love was supposed to feel like? A checklist of expectations? A stage for others to applaud? The truth hit me like a winter wind off Lake Michigan when I got a call from Willow Creek Nursing Home in Evanston. Eleanor had been there for 2 years, ever since her COPD made it impossible for her to live alone. Despite her oxygen tank and frail frame, her mind was as sharp as ever, her laughter still bright enough to light up a room. She'd been my biggest cheerleader for the wedding, asking about every detail during my visits, her eyes sparkling as she imagined me walking down the aisle. "Is James treating you right?" she'd ask, her voice teasing but firm. "He better, or he'll have to answer to me." I'd laugh, promising her he was everything she'd hoped for me. But that call changed everything. The nurse's voice was gentle but direct. Eleanor's condition was worsening. Her lungs were failing faster than expected, and the doctors gave her 6 to 8 weeks at best. I drove to Willow Creek that evening, the Chicago skyline fading in my rearview mirror as I crossed into Evanston. The nursing home was quiet, the kind of place where time seemed to slow, where every moment carried weight. Eleanor was in her room, sitting by the window, her gray hair catching the soft light. She smiled when she saw me, but her breaths were shallow, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for mine. "Tell me about the wedding, sweetheart," she said, her voice softer than usual. I sat beside her, holding her hand, and described the Drake Hotel, the chandeliers, the flowers. But as I spoke, my words felt empty, like I was reading from a script. Eleanor listened, her eyes warm, but I could see the effort it took for her to stay present. She was fading, and the thought of her missing my wedding day cracked something open inside me. That night, driving back to Lincoln Park, I pulled over on Lakeshore Drive, the city lights blurring through tears. I realized with a clarity that cut through the noise that none of the details mattered. Not the chandeliers, not the guest list, not the dress. What mattered was Eleanor, the woman who'd taught me to be brave, to love fiercely, to choose what was real over what was expected. She'd been there for every milestone, my first school play, my high school graduation, the day I got my job at a Chicago marketing firm. How could I walk down the aisle without her there to see it? The Drake Hotel was beautiful, but it was a world away from Willow Creek, a world Eleanor couldn't travel to. Her heart was too weak, her body too fragile. The thought of her missing the moment I promised to love James forever was unbearable. I called James from the car, my voice shaking as I explained the situation. "I can't do this without her," I said, the words spilling out. "She's the reason I know what love is." James didn't hesitate. "Then we move the wedding, Emily. We get married at Willow Creek so Eleanor can be there." His certainty, his willingness to upend everything for what mattered to me, reminded me why I loved him. This wasn't about venues or dresses or impressing Margaret's friends. It was about love, the kind that shows up in the quiet moments, the kind that chooses people over perfection. As I hung up, a weight lifted, replaced by a flicker of excitement. For the first time in months, I felt like our wedding might actually be ours. The next morning, I called Sarah Thompson, the activities coordinator at Willow Creek. Her voice lit up when I explained our plan. "Emily, that's the most beautiful thing I've heard in years," she said, her enthusiasm infectious. "Our residents would love to be part of a wedding. Let me talk to the staff, but I know we can make this special." As I hung up, I felt a spark of hope, a sense that we were building something real. But I knew the next call, to Margaret, would be harder. The guest list had ballooned to 250 people. Most of them names my mother, Margaret, insisted were essential to our family's standing in Chicago's social circles. My wedding dress, a $5,000 vision of lace and silk, hung in my closet like a monument to a day I wasn't sure I recognized anymore. On paper, it was perfect. A celebration fit for Instagram feeds and society pages. But deep in my heart, something felt wrong, like I was playing a role in someone else's story. I braced myself, knowing she'd see this as a betrayal of everything she valued. And deep down, I wondered if I had the strength to face her judgment, to choose my heart over her expectations. But Eleanor's smile, her stories of love in ordinary places, gave me courage. This was my wedding, my love, my family, and I was ready to fight for it. Chicago is a city of contrasts, towering skyscrapers casting shadows over quiet neighborhoods, where dreams of grandeur meet the reality of everyday life. Growing up in Evanston, just north of the city, I learned the value of authenticity from my grandmother, Eleanor, who raised me after my parents' bitter divorce when I was 10. Eleanor was my anchor, the one who taught me to see beauty in the ordinary. She'd sit me on her porch in Evanston, under the soft glow of a summer evening, and share stories of her life, her voice warm and steady like a lighthouse guiding me home. One story stuck with me, her wedding in 1955, held in a small Evanston courthouse with just a handful of loved ones. She'd worn a simple dress, her eyes bright with love for my grandfather, and they celebrated with pie and coffee at a local diner. "It wasn't about the show, Emily," she'd say, her hands wrapping around mine. "It was about the promise we made to each other." Those words echoed in my mind as I planned my own wedding, but they felt distant, drowned out by the noise of expectations. Margaret, my mother, had a different vision. To her, a wedding was a statement, a chance to cement our family's place among Chicago's elite. She'd grown up in the Gold Coast, where appearances were currency, and she carried that mindset like a badge. "Emily, this is your moment," she'd say, her voice sharp with urgency as we toured the Drake Hotel's ballroom. "People will talk about this day for years. You need to make it unforgettable." She pushed for a 12-piece string quartet, a 5-tier cake, and a floral budget that could have funded a small charity. I nodded along, caught up in her enthusiasm, but each decision felt like another layer of a costume I didn't want to wear. The guest list grew with names I barely knew, colleagues of Margaret's from her real estate firm, distant cousins from Naperville, and socialites she'd met at charity galas. "It's about connections, Emily," she'd insist, flipping through seating charts. "This is how you build a future." James, bless his heart, tried to keep me grounded. He'd grown up in a modest family in Oak Park, where love was shown through actions, not displays. When I'd stress over table settings or whether the napkins matched the centerpieces, he'd pull me close, his brown eyes steady, and say, "Emily, I just want to marry you. The rest is noise." His words were a lifeline, but I couldn't shake the feeling that our wedding was becoming a performance, a spectacle designed to impress rather than celebrate. The moment I hung up the phone with James, my heart felt lighter, like a bird breaking free from a cage. His words echoed in my mind. Simple and sure. "We get married at Willow Creek so Eleanor can be there." It was a decision that felt so right it scared me. A leap into the unknown that promised to rewrite the story of our wedding. I was 28, standing at a crossroads in my Chicago apartment, the city's skyline glittering outside my window like a reminder of the life I was supposed to want. That afternoon, James and I drove to Willow Creek to visit Eleanor. The nursing home sat quietly in Evanston, its brick facade softened by flower beds, tended by the residents. Eleanor was in her room, her oxygen tank humming softly, her gray eyes bright despite the frailty of her body. "There's my beautiful bride," she said, her smile wide as we walked in. I sat beside her, taking her hand, her skin cool and delicate like tissue paper. "Grandma, we have something to tell you," I began, my voice thick with emotion. I explained our plan to move the wedding to Willow Creek, to transform the community room into our venue so she could be there. Her eyes filled with tears, but her smile grew brighter, like the sun breaking through clouds. "Emily, that's the kindest thing you could do," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "When I married your grandfather in that Evanston courthouse, we didn't have much. Just love and a few friends. That's all you need, sweetheart. Don't let anyone tell you different." She paused, her breath shallow, but her voice steady. "You're giving me a gift I'll carry to my last day." Her words wrapped around my heart, anchoring my resolve. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was about honoring the woman who'd taught me to live with courage. Eleanor shared more that day, stories I hadn't heard before. She spoke of her wedding in 1955, how her mother had disapproved of the simplicity, calling it beneath their family. But Eleanor and my grandfather stood firm, choosing love over pride. We danced in a diner to a jukebox, she said, her eyes distant but warm. And I felt like the richest woman alive. Her stories were a lifeline, a reminder that love didn't need grandeur to be true. As we left, James squeezed my hand. "We're doing the right thing," he said, and I nodded, feeling a quiet strength growing inside me. But the peace didn't last. That evening, I called Margaret to share our decision. The silence on the other end was deafening, a cold void that made my stomach twist. "Emily, you can't be serious," she finally said, her voice sharp like a blade. "A nursing home? Do you have any idea how that will look? People will think we're destitute, that we can't afford a proper wedding." I tried to explain, my voice steady but pleading. "Mom, Eleanor's dying. She might not have 6 weeks. This is our chance to include her." Margaret cut me off, her tone dripping with disdain. "This is about family reputation, Emily. You've sent invitations to the Drake Hotel. People have booked flights, hotels. You can't throw that away for some sentimental gesture." Her words stung, each one a reminder of the gap between us. She wasn't just rejecting the venue. She was rejecting what it meant to me, to Eleanor, to the love that defined us. Lauren, my sister, was worse. When I texted her the news, she replied with a laughing emoji, followed by, "A nursing home wedding? Really, Em? People are gonna call it a budget bash in a hospital cafeteria." Her words hit like a slap, casual but cruel. Lauren, 24 and obsessed with her social media image, couldn't fathom a wedding that didn't look good on Instagram. "You know this is crazy, right?" she said when I called her later, her voice light but cutting. "Grandma's on so many meds, she probably won't even remember it. Why ruin your big day for something so depressing?" I gripped the phone, my voice shaking. "She's not confused, Lauren. Her mind is clear. She deserves to see me marry James." Lauren laughed, a sound that made my chest ache. "Sure, but don't expect me to post about it. This is like social suicide." Driving home that night, the Chicago skyline blurred through my tears. Margaret and Lauren's reactions weren't just about the venue. They were about their fear of judgment, their need to control how the world saw us. But as I thought of Eleanor's tearful smile, her stories of love in ordinary places, I knew I couldn't back down. James was right. This was our wedding, our love, our choice. And no amount of mockery could change what felt true in my heart. But in that moment, I didn't care about the Drake Hotel's chandeliers or my mother Margaret's guest list. I cared about Eleanor, my grandmother, the woman who'd raised me in Evanston when the world felt broken, who'd taught me that love was about showing up, not showing off. Moving our wedding to Willow Creek Nursing Home wasn't just a change of venue. It was a declaration of what mattered most, a promise to honor the woman who'd shaped me. As we pulled into our Lincoln Park apartment, I looked at James, his face soft in the streetlight's glow. "We're doing this," I said, my voice firm for the first time all day. He smiled, pulling me close. "We're doing this, Emily, for Eleanor, for us." And in that moment, I knew we were stepping into something bigger than a wedding. A journey that would test us, change us, and show us what love really meant. But as the weight of that choice settled in, I knew it wouldn't come without a fight. The next morning, I woke with a nervous energy buzzing through me, the kind that comes when you know you're about to upend everything. James was already up, brewing coffee in our Lincoln Park kitchen. His calm presence like an anchor in the storm I felt brewing. "You okay?" he asked, handing me a mug, his eyes searching mine. I nodded, but my voice betrayed me, trembling as I spoke. "I'm terrified, James. What if this is a mistake? What if my family's right, and it's too much, too strange?" He set his coffee down and took my hands, his touch warm and steady. "Emily, we're doing this for Eleanor, for us. It's not about anyone else. If this feels right in your heart, then it's the only choice that matters." His certainty was a gift, a reminder of why I loved him. James, raised in Oak Park with a family that valued loyalty over luxury, saw the world through a lens of simplicity. To him, love wasn't about impressing others. It was about building a life together, one honest moment at a time. His support gave me the courage to take the next step. I called Sarah Thompson, the activities coordinator at Willow Creek, later that morning. Her voice was warm, like a hug through the phone. "Emily, tell me what you're thinking," she said, her enthusiasm already infectious. I explained our plan to move the wedding to the nursing home so Eleanor could attend, my words tumbling out in a mix of excitement and nerves. "Oh, honey," Sarah replied, her voice catching with emotion. "That's the most beautiful thing I've heard in my 15 years here. Our residents would be over the moon to be part of a wedding. Let me talk to the administration, but I'm sure they'll say yes." She paused, then added, "You know, we could make this special. The residents could help decorate, maybe even share their own wedding stories for a memory lane project. What do you think?" The idea sparked something in me, a vision of a celebration woven with love and history, not just ours, but the community's. "That sounds perfect," I said, my heart swelling with possibility. Sarah promised to call back with details, and I hung up feeling like we were building something sacred, something real. Your wedding to Willow Creek Nursing Home wasn't just a logistical choice. It was a rebellion against everything my mother, Margaret, had taught me to value. At 28, standing in my Lincoln Park apartment with the Chicago skyline glowing outside, I felt the weight of that decision pressing down on me. James, my fiancé, had supported me without hesitation, his steady presence a reminder that love was about choosing what mattered over what looked good. The dinner unraveled from there. Margaret pushed harder, suggesting we postpone the wedding until Eleanor was better, ignoring the doctor's prognosis that she had weeks, not months. "You can't throw away a year and a half of planning at the Drake Hotel," she said, her voice rising. "People have made arrangements, Emily. You're being selfish." Selfish. The word cut deeper than I expected, planting a seed of doubt. Was I being selfish? Forcing my vision on everyone else? I tried to explain, my voice breaking. "Mom, this isn't about the Drake or the guest list. It's about love, about making sure Eleanor sees me marry the man I love." Margaret shook her head, her expression a mix of pity and frustration. "Love doesn't need to look like a nursing home, Emily. You're not thinking clearly." Later that night, alone in our apartment, I found myself spiraling. James was in the shower, and I sat on the couch, staring at my phone, Lauren's words echoing in my mind. Sad nursing home thing. I thought of Eleanor, her frail hands holding mine at Willow Creek, her eyes bright with joy when we told her about the wedding. She'd shared stories of her own wedding in 1955, a simple Evanston courthouse ceremony that her mother had called a disgrace. "We chose love, Emily," she'd said, her voice steady despite her labored breathing. "And it was the best decision we ever made." Those words had grounded me, but Margaret and Lauren's judgment made me question everything. What if they were right? What if this choice alienated my family, tarnished our day? The next day, I stopped by Margaret's house to pick up some family photos for a memory table we planned for the wedding. As I approached the kitchen, I overheard her on the phone, her voice low and conspiratorial. "I don't know what's gotten into Emily," she was saying, likely to a cousin in Naperville. "This nursing home idea is absurd. People will think we're struggling financially, or worse, that there's some family drama. James seems sensible, but he's just going along with her. I'm worried she's having some kind of crisis." My heart sank, the betrayal sharp and cold. I stepped into the doorway, and Margaret's eyes widened, her smile tight as she ended the call. "Emily, I was just talking to your aunt about the wedding situation," she said, her voice overly sweet. "She's concerned about you, sweetheart." Concerned. The word felt hollow, a polite mask for gossip. That evening, I found something that changed everything. Sorting through a box of Eleanor's keepsakes for the wedding, I discovered a letter she'd written to me years ago, when I'd left for college in Chicago. Her handwriting was elegant, each word deliberate. "Emily," it read, "life will try to pull you toward what looks good, what others expect. But love is about choosing what feels true, even when it's hard. Your grandfather and I learned that when we married against everyone's wishes. Trust your heart, always." I read it twice, tears streaming down my face. Eleanor's words were a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. She'd faced the same judgment, the same pressure, and chosen love anyway. I clutched the letter to my chest, feeling her strength flow through me. When James got home, I showed him the letter, my voice steady for the first time in days. "This is why we're doing this," I said, pointing to Eleanor's words. Not for Margaret, not for Lauren, not for anyone else. For us, for Eleanor, for what's real. He pulled me into his arms, his voice soft but firm. We're not backing down, Emily. This is our wedding, and it's going to be beautiful. As we sat there, the Chicago skyline twinkling outside, I felt a fire ignite inside me. Margaret and Lauren could fight me all they wanted, but I wasn't giving up. This wedding was about love, about honoring the woman who'd taught me to be brave, and no amount of judgment could take that away. But as I braced myself for the inevitable clash with my family, I knew the fight was just beginning. Margaret and my sister, Lauren, had already mocked our plan to hold the wedding at Willow Creek so my grandmother, Eleanor, could attend. Their words stung, but I wasn't prepared for how far they'd go to stop me, how their fear of judgment would turn a moment of love into a battlefield. Margaret's home in Chicago's Gold Coast was a showcase of her values, all polished marble and curated art, a reflection of her obsession with appearances. She'd invited James, Lauren, and me to what she called a family planning session at her dining room table. But the moment we sat down, I knew it was no such thing. The table was covered with printouts, articles from bridal magazines about proper wedding venues, like the Palmer House Hilton or the Art Institute of Chicago. Margaret's voice was calm but sharp, the kind of tone she used when brokering real estate deals. Emily, we all want Eleanor to be part of your day, she began, her eyes flicking to James as if he were complicit in my madness. But there are better ways to make that happen. We've researched medical transport services that can bring her to a more suitable location, somewhere that reflects the importance of this occasion. I stared at her, my heart sinking. Mom, Eleanor can't travel. The doctors said even a short trip could exhaust her, maybe worse. Margaret waved a hand, dismissing my words. Nonsense. There are professionals for this. You're letting emotions cloud your judgment. Lauren, sitting across from me, opened her laptop with a smirk. At 24, she lived for the approval of her social media followers, and the idea of a nursing home wedding was, to her, a public relations disaster. Look at these venues, Em, she said, clicking through photos of ballrooms in Lake Forest, all gleaming wood and crystal chandeliers. This one has wheelchair access and a medical facility nearby if Grandma needs it. You could still have a real wedding, not some sad nursing home thing. The word sad hit me like a punch. I gripped James's hand under the table, my voice trembling. It's not sad, Lauren. It's about making sure Eleanor's there when I marry James. She's the most important person in my life. Lauren rolled her eyes, her laughter sharp and cutting. Come on, Em. You know people are gonna talk. They'll say you couldn't afford a proper venue. It's embarrassing. James's fork clattered against his plate, his jaw tight. Embarrassing? He said, his voice low but firm, the way it got when he was angry but holding back. What's embarrassing is worrying more about what people think than about Emily's grandmother. This is our wedding, not a status symbol. Margaret's eyes narrowed, her voice cold. James, with all due respect, you're young. You don't understand how decisions like this follow you. A wedding is forever, in photos, in memories. People will judge you for this, and they'll judge our family. I felt my chest tighten, the air in the room heavy with her disapproval. This wasn't just about the venue. It was about control, about Margaret's need to shape our lives into something that fit her Gold Coast world. The decision to move our wedding to Willow Creek Nursing Home in Evanston was like planting a seed in rocky soil. At 28, standing in my Lincoln Park apartment with Chicago's skyline as my backdrop, I felt a fragile hope taking root. James, my fiancé, had stood by me, his support a steady hand guiding me through the storm of my family's disapproval. My mother, Margaret, and sister Lauren had called our plan a disgrace, a budget wedding that would shame our family's Gold Coast reputation. Sarah suggested compiling their stories into a memory book for us, a keepsake filled with their wisdom and photos from their own weddings. It'll be a gift from all of us, she said, her smile bright. I nodded, tears pricking my eyes, imagining Eleanor flipping through those pages, her own love story mirrored in theirs. The next discovery came when I visited Eleanor's room to sort through her keepsakes for the wedding. Tucked in a cedar box, I found her wedding veil from 1955, a delicate cascade of lace, yellowed but beautiful. Grandma? "Can I wear this?" I asked, holding it up. Her eyes softened, her breath shallow but her voice steady. "Oh, Emily, I'd be honored," she said, her hand trembling as she touched the lace. "I wore that when I married your grandfather, against everyone's wishes. It's a reminder that love is worth fighting for." Her words hit me like a wave, washing away the doubts planted by Margaret and Lauren. Wearing her veil would be more than a gesture. It would be a promise to carry her strength, her courage, into my marriage. I spent the next few days calling vendors, explaining our change of plans. The photographer, Lisa, from Oak Park, was moved to tears when I told her about Eleanor. "I shot a nursing home wedding once," she said, her voice soft. "It was the most emotional day of my career. I'm all in." The florist from Lincoln Park offered to create simple arrangements of roses and lilies, perfect for the community room's intimate setting. Each conversation felt like a step toward something authentic, a wedding that reflected James and me, not Margaret's social ambitions. For the first time in months, I was excited, not anxious, about our day. This wasn't about impressing Chicago's elite. It was about creating a moment that would live in our hearts forever. But Margaret and Lauren weren't done. Margaret's texts came like clockwork, each one laced with passive-aggressive guilt. "Emily, have you considered how this will affect our family's reputation?" One read, "People are already asking questions." Lauren took a different tack, sending me Instagram posts of real weddings at venues like the Chicago Botanic Garden with captions like, "This is what I imagined for you." Her words stung. Not because I doubted our choice, but because they showed how little she understood me. One evening, I overheard Lauren on the phone with a cousin in Naperville, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Yeah, Emily's having her wedding in a nursing home. Can you imagine the photos? Total disaster." I stood frozen in Margaret's Gold Coast hallway, the betrayal sharp and cold. My own sister was turning our love into a punchline. James found me later, curled up on our couch, Eleanor's veil in my hands. "They don't get it," I whispered, my voice breaking. "They think this is a mistake, that I'm throwing everything away." He sat beside me, his arm around my shoulders. "Emily, they're wrong. This wedding is about us, about Eleanor, about love that's real. Let them talk. We're building something beautiful." His words were a balm, soothing the ache in my chest. I thought of the residents' stories. Mrs. Rivera's piano, Mr. Ellis's quilt, Eleanor's veil. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a community coming together, a celebration of love in its purest form. As the days passed, Sarah sent updates from Willow Creek. The residents had formed a wedding committee, meeting daily to plan decorations and share ideas. One resident, a former seamstress, offered to mend Eleanor's veil, ensuring it was ready for the day. Another suggested stringing paper hearts with handwritten blessings for our marriage. Each detail felt like a gift, a reminder that love didn't need grandeur to shine. But as I thought of my grandmother, Eleanor, her frail hands and bright eyes waiting at Willow Creek, I knew this was about more than a venue. It was about building a moment that honored love, family, and the woman who'd raised me in Evanston when my world fell apart. The days that followed were a whirlwind of planning, not for chandeliers or guest lists, but for a celebration woven with heart, community, and meaning. I began to see our wedding not as a compromise, but as a triumph, a chance to honor Eleanor and the values she'd instilled in me. Margaret and Lauren could cling to their fears, but I was done letting them define my happiness. With James by my side and Eleanor's love in my heart, I was ready to build a wedding that would mean everything, not because it looked perfect, but because it felt true. And in that process, I found something I hadn't expected, a sense of purpose that made my wedding feel like ours again. The first call I made was to Sarah Thompson, the activities coordinator at Willow Creek. Her voice was a burst of warmth through the phone, like sunlight breaking through Chicago's winter clouds. "Emily, we're all in," she said, her excitement palpable. "The residents are buzzing about your wedding. They want to make it special." She proposed a memory lane project, where residents would share stories of their own weddings and contribute mementos to decorate the community room. The idea struck me like a chord, resonating with Eleanor's tales of her 1955 courthouse wedding in Evanston. "Let's do it," I said, my voice catching with emotion. "Let's make this a celebration for everyone." Sarah promised to rally the staff and residents, and I hung up feeling like we were building something sacred. A wedding that wasn't just about James and me, but about a community coming together. The next day, James and I visited Willow Creek to meet with Sarah and the residents. The nursing home's community room was simple, with beige walls and linoleum floors, but Sarah's vision transformed it in my mind. "We'll drape white tulle from the ceiling," she said, gesturing to the space, "and string battery-powered fairy lights for a starry effect. The residents are already collecting flowers from their gardens." A group of residents, some in wheelchairs, others leaning on canes, gathered nearby, their faces lit with excitement. One woman, Mrs. Rivera, a former music teacher, offered to play piano for the ceremony. "I haven't played for a wedding since 1962, she said, her eyes twinkling, "but I've still got it." Another resident, Mr. Ellis, showed us a quilt he'd been working on, patches of fabric stitched with memories of his own marriage. "We'll use it as an altar backdrop," he said, his voice gruff but warm. Their enthusiasm wrapped around me like a hug, and for the first time in weeks, I felt my wedding taking shape as a celebration of love, not obligation. We spent an afternoon with the residents, their stories pouring out like treasures from a forgotten chest. Mrs. Rivera shared how she'd married her high school sweetheart in a Chicago church. Their reception, a potluck in a community center. Mr. Ellis spoke of his wife, gone 10 years, and how they danced under the stars at a park in Oak Park. Each story was a thread, weaving a tapestry of love that stretched across decades. The morning of my wedding day dawned with a golden October light spilling through the windows of our Lincoln Park apartment, casting a warm glow over Chicago's skyline. At 28, I stood on the edge of a moment I'd dreamed of, but not in the way I'd once imagined. The grand ballroom of the Drake Hotel, with its chandeliers and 250 guests, had been replaced by the community room at Willow Creek Nursing Home in Evanston, where my grandmother, Eleanor, could witness my vows to James. The residents, dressed in their finest clothes shoots, dresses, even a few vintage hats sat in the middle, their smiles wide and genuine. Staff members lined the walls, some wiping tears as they watched the room come alive. Mrs. Rivera, the former music teacher, sat at the piano, her fingers poised over the keys, and there, in the front row, was Eleanor, in her wheelchair, her blue cardigan soft against her frail frame, her eyes shining with pride. When our gazes met, she raised her hands to clap, a small gesture that felt like the world. As Mrs. Rivera began playing the wedding march, the room stood, a wave of love rising around me. I walked down the aisle, Eleanor's veil trailing behind, my heart full. James stood under the arch, his dark suit sharp, his smile, the one that always made me feel like we were the only two people in the room. Our eyes locked, and the weight of Margaret's disapproval, Lauren's mockery, faded away. This was our moment, our promise, our love. The residents' faces, lined with years of wisdom, beamed as I passed. Some reached out, their hands brushing mine, whispering blessings. The children of Willow Creek's staff, dressed as flower girls, scattered petals with giggles, their joy a reminder that love spans generations. The ceremony was everything I dreamed of and more. James's vows brought tears to my eyes, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "Emily, watching you choose Eleanor, choose love over appearances, showed me the woman I'm marrying," he said. "I promise to build our life on that same courage, to always choose Smer's side, no matter what the world thinks." I spoke my vows through tears, thanking Eleanor for teaching me to find beauty in the ordinary, to choose love over fear. When we were pronounced husband and wife, the room erupted in applause, and Eleanor's voice, frail but clear, rang out. "I'm so glad I lived to see this." My heart swelled, the moment etching itself into my soul. The reception was a celebration unlike any other. Mrs. Rivera led the residents in a surprise medley of 1960s love ballads, their voices blending in a nostalgic harmony that brought laughter and tears. Residents shared stories of their weddings, some from the 1940s, others from the 1970s, their words weaving a tapestry of love across time. The dessert table, covered with homemade treats like Eleanor's apple tart recipe, felt like a family reunion, warm and real. James's nieces taught residents simple dance moves, their laughter echoing as Mr. Ellis spun slowly in his wheelchair. The photographer, Lisa, couldn't stop snapping photos, her voice awed. "This joy is unreal," she said. "These pictures will be magic." Margaret and Lauren left right after the ceremony, missing the residents' stories, the spontaneous singing, the moment when the children presented us with the memory book filled with their wedding tales. Their absence was a quiet ache, but it couldn't overshadow the love in the room. As James and I danced our first dance, surrounded by clapping residents, I knew we'd made the right choice. This wasn't the Drake Hotel, but it was home, a place where love was celebrated in its purest form. And as I caught Eleanor's eye, her smile brighter than the fairy lights, I knew this day was perfect, not because it looked good, but because it felt true. My mother, Margaret, and sister Lauren had called it a disgrace, a budget wedding that would shame our Gold Coast family. But as I slipped into my wedding dress, Eleanor's 1,955 lace veil resting lightly on my shoulders, I felt a peace I hadn't known in months. This day wasn't about impressing Chicago's elite. It was about love, family, and the community that had embraced our unconventional choice. As I prepared to walk down the aisle, I knew this moment would define not just my marriage, but who I was choosing to be. Willow Creek's community room had been transformed into something magical. Sarah Thompson, the activities coordinator, had arrived at dawn with a team of volunteers, draping white tulle from the ceiling to create a soft canopy. Battery-powered fairy lights twinkled like stars, and flowers from the residents' gardens, roses, lilies, and dahlias filled the space with color and life. A wooden arch, pulled from storage and adorned with ivy and white roses, stood at the front, framed by the quilt Mr. Ellis and other residents had crafted, its patches a tapestry of their own love stories. The air hummed with anticipation, the scent of fresh flowers mingling with the warmth of community. Sarah had converted a family meeting room into a bridal suite, where James's mother, Karen, from Oak Park, helped with my hair and makeup. "You're marrying a good man, Emily," she said, her voice soft as she pinned Eleanor's veil in place. "And what you're doing for your grandmother is beautiful." Her words, free of judgment, were a balm after weeks of Margaret's disapproval. At 11:30, Sarah knocked gently on the door. "The residents are taking their seats," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "And your mother and sister just pulled into the parking lot. They're having a heated discussion outside." I peered through the window, my heart sinking as I saw Margaret and Lauren by their car, their body language tense, Lauren checking her phone as if hoping to escape. They'd made it clear they thought this wedding was a mistake, a sad nursing home thing that would embarrass our family. "Whatever they decide," I told Sarah, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest, "we start at noon." I wasn't going to let their reluctance dim this day. This was for Eleanor, for James, for the love we were building. At 11:55, Margaret and Lauren slipped into the community room, dressed in elegant outfits but wearing expressions that belonged at a funeral. They took seats in the back row, as far from the heart of the celebration as possible, their presence a grudging obligation. But everything else about the moment was perfect. James's family filled the front rows, their faces glowing with joy. The morning after our wedding at Willow Creek Nursing Home in Evanston, I woke up in our Lincoln Park apartment, the soft glow of Chicago's skyline filtering through the curtains. At 28, I was still basking in the warmth of the day before, the memory of Eleanor's tearful smile, James's heartfelt vows, and the residents' joyful voices singing 1960s love ballads. By mid-morning, my phone was ringing off the hook. CBS Chicago wanted to interview us for their evening news. The Knot, a wedding magazine, reached out to feature our story in their next issue. A filmmaker from Los Angeles emailed about a documentary on non-traditional weddings, calling ours a perfect example of love over luxury. I sat on our couch, overwhelmed, as James read the messages aloud, his voice filled with pride. "Emily, this isn't just about us anymore," he said, his eyes meeting mine. "It's about showing people what matters." I nodded, tears pricking my eyes. Our wedding, born from a desire to include Eleanor, had become a spark, igniting conversations about family, elder care, and the courage to choose authenticity. I thought of Eleanor, sitting in her wheelchair at Willow Creek, her voice clear despite her frailty, saying, "I'm so glad I lived to see this." Her joy was now touching thousands, a legacy I hadn't anticipated. but not everyone was celebrating. Around noon, my phone rang, Margaret's name flashing on the screen. Her voice was tight, strained, like she was holding back a storm. "Emily, I'm seeing things online about your wedding," she said, her words clipped. "News articles, videos, people sharing photos. It needs to stop. You need to tell that photographer to take it down immediately." I blinked, caught off guard. "Mom, what are you talking about? People love it. They're calling it inspiring." She scoffed, her tone sharp. "Inspiring? It's a circus. You're airing our family's private medical situation for the world to see. Photos of elderly strangers in a nursing home? It's embarrassing, Emily." Her words stung, a reminder of the gap between us. To her, our wedding was a scandal, a blemish on her Gold Coast reputation. To me, it was a celebration of love, of Eleanor, of the community that had embraced us. I tried to stay calm, my voice steady. "Mom, this video shows what love looks like. It's not about you or our family's image. It's about Eleanor, about James and me." Margaret's voice rose, a mix of panic and frustration. "You don't understand, Emily. People are talking, asking questions. This reflects poorly on all of us. You need to shut it down before it gets worse." Before I could respond, another call came through, this time from Lauren. Her voice was frantic, laced with the same desperation. "Em, you have to stop this," she said, not bothering with a greeting. "My friends in Milwaukee are texting me, asking if I'm the sister in the nursing home wedding story. Do you know how humiliating this is? People think we're heartless because we didn't support you." I gripped the phone, my heart aching at her words. "Maybe that's because you didn't, Lauren," I said, my voice breaking. "You laughed at our wedding, called it a joke. This video is showing the world what you couldn't see." James, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand, his presence a quiet strength. "Put it on speaker," he said softly. I did, and Lauren's voice filled the room. "Don't make this about me, Em. Just tell Lisa to delete the video. Say it was posted without permission. Make it go away." James leaned closer, his tone firm but calm. "Lauren, this video is bringing people joy, inspiring them to honor their families. We're not taking it down to make you comfortable." Lauren sighed, exasperated. "You're both so naive, this is going to haunt us forever." She hung up, leaving a heavy silence in the room. My grandmother, Eleanor, had been there, her frail hands clapping as James and I danced under fairy lights, her 1,955 wedding veil a delicate crown on my head. My mother, Margaret, and sister Lauren had left early, their disapproval a quiet ache amid the love that filled the room. I thought the wedding was the end of our story, a perfect moment sealed in our hearts. That afternoon, as more messages poured in, I realized the irony. Margaret and Lauren, so obsessed with what Chicago's elite would think, were now panicking because the world was celebrating what they'd mocked. A comment from a woman in Denver stood out, her words a mirror to my own journey. "Your wedding reminded me to visit my grandfather in assisted living," she wrote. "I'm planning his birthday party there next week. Thank you for showing me what's possible." Each message was a reminder that our choice, born from love for Eleanor, was rippling outward, touching lives in ways we'd never imagined. As I read them to James, my voice thick with emotion, I felt a shift inside me. This wasn't just our story anymore. It was a call to others, a reminder that love could shine brightest in the most unexpected places. And no matter how loudly Margaret and Lauren protested, I knew we'd done something right, something true, something that would live far beyond the walls of Willow Creek. But as I reached for my phone that Sunday morning, a flood of notifications told me our story was just beginning, spreading far beyond Evanston, touching lives we'd never met, and turning our choice into a movement that no one, not even Margaret, could stop. It started with a buzz, my phone vibrating relentlessly on the nightstand. James stirred beside me, his voice groggy but curious. "What's going on, Emily?" I opened Instagram, my eyes widening at the sight of a 3-minute video posted by Lisa, our photographer from Oak Park. Set to a gentle piano melody, the video captured the heart of our wedding. Eleanor's radiant face as we exchanged vows. Mrs. Rivera's fingers dancing across the piano, residents clapping during our first dance, and the staff's children scattering petals with giggles. The caption read, "Love doesn't need a fancy venue. It needs heart. Number, heart over hype. I scrolled, my breath catching. The video had been shared over 100,000 times overnight, with thousands of comments pouring in from across the country. Strangers called it the most beautiful wedding I've ever seen, a reminder of what love really means. Proof that family comes first. The hashtag number heart over hype was trending nationally, a beacon of authenticity in a world obsessed with perfection. I showed James, my hands trembling with a mix of awe and disbelief. "This is insane," he said, his smile wide as he scrolled through the comments. 1. From a woman in Seattle. Hit me hard. "My dad passed away in hospice before my wedding last year," she wrote. "Your video makes me wish I'd been brave enough to move my ceremony to him. Thank you for showing what's possible." Another, from a nurse in Atlanta, read, "I work in a nursing home, and your wedding gave our residents a day of joy they'll never forget. You've changed how I see my job." Each comment was a thread, weaving our story into a tapestry of shared experiences, of people longing for connection over appearances. A Chicago influencer known for her lifestyle posts had shared the video, sparking a real love challenge, urging couples to share their own stories of meaningful celebrations. Posts flooded in, from backyard weddings in Texas to vow renewals in hospital rooms in New York, each one echoing our choice to prioritize love. The glow of our wedding at Willow Creek Nursing Home in Evanston lingered in my heart like the soft light of a Chicago sunrise. At 28, I was still reeling from the day James and I exchanged vows under a quilted arch, my grandmother Eleanor's 1,955 veil on my shoulders, her frail voice declaring, "I'm so glad I lived to see this." James, sitting across from me, reached for my hand, his eyes steady. "They're scared, Emily," he said softly. "They're scared of looking bad, of losing control, but that's their problem, not ours." His words grounded me, a reminder of the love we'd built at Willow Creek. James's mother, Karen, called later, her Oak Park warmth a stark contrast to my family's coldness. "Emily, what you and James did was beautiful," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Don't let anyone make you doubt that. We're so proud." Her support, free of judgment, was a lifeline, reinforcing my resolve to stand by our choice, no matter how fiercely Margaret and Lauren fought against it. The WBEZ segment aired that evening, a 10-minute discussion where James and I shared our story. "We moved our wedding for my grandmother, Eleanor," I said, my voice steady on the radio. "Love isn't about fancy venues. It's about the people who matter most." The host, moved by our words, opened the phone lines, and callers flooded in, sharing their own stories of meaningful celebrations. A woman from Evanston described her parents' 50th anniversary in a nursing home, inspired by our video. A man from Springfield spoke of his regret for not including his grandfather in his wedding, urging others to act before it was too late. Each call was a thread, weaving our story into a larger tapestry of love and connection, a movement that was growing beyond our wildest dreams. But Margaret and Lauren's calls kept coming, each one more desperate. Margaret insisted we were exploiting Eleanor's condition for attention, ignoring the joy our wedding had brought her. Lauren sent screenshots of online comments, one calling her the sister who didn't get it, her panic palpable in every text. "This is ruining my life, Em," she wrote. "You have to fix this." I stared at the messages, my heart torn between anger and sadness. They weren't just rejecting the video. They were rejecting the values it stood for, the love that had filled Willow Creek's community room. I thought of Eleanor, her frail hands clapping, her stories of her 1,955 Evanston wedding, her letter urging me to trust my heart. She'd faced the same judgment, the same pressure to conform, and chosen love anyway. Her courage was my guide, a light in the darkness of my family's fear. That night, James and I sat on our couch, the Chicago skyline twinkling outside. "We're not taking it down," I said, my voice firm. "This video is changing lives, showing people what love can do. Margaret and Lauren can't see that, but I won't let their fear stop us." James nodded, pulling me close. "You're right, Emily. This is our truth, and it's worth fighting for." As we talked, I opened the Caregiver Group's page, reading new posts about families planning nursing home events, from birthday parties in Ohio to vow renewals in California. One message from a nurse in Seattle stood out. "Your wedding reminded me why I do this work," she wrote. "You've given our residents a voice, a place in the world again." Her words settled in my heart, a reminder that our choice was about more than us. It was about honoring Eleanor, about showing the world that love could shine in the most unexpected places. As the days passed, the public's praise grew louder, drowning out Margaret and Lauren's protests. A local Chicago blogger wrote, "Emily and James's wedding is a lesson in courage, a reminder to choose love over appearances." The comments, the shares, the radio calls, they were a chorus of support, a community we hadn't known we'd built. But Margaret's voice lingered, a whisper of doubt. "This reflects poorly on all of us," she'd said. The residents' 1960s love ballads, the children scattering petals, the memory book filled with their story at it was a day of pure love, untouched by the disapproval of my mother, Margaret, and sister, Lauren, who'd called it a budget wedding unfit for our Gold Coast family. But when Lisa's 3-minute video of our wedding went viral, shared over 100,000 times with the hashtag #HeartOverHype, our story became a beacon, inspiring strangers across the country. I pushed it aside, focusing on the stories of strangers, the caregivers, the families inspired by our wedding. Our choice, born from love for Eleanor, was rippling outward, touching lives in ways we'd never imagined. And no matter how loudly my family protested, I knew we were on the right path, one paved with heart, not fear. As I sat in our Lincoln Park apartment, the Chicago skyline, a quiet witness, I thought the world's embrace would soften my family's resistance. Instead, their backlash grew fiercer, their fear of judgment clashing with the public's praise, forcing me to choose between their comfort and the truth we'd shared with the world. The Monday after our wedding, my phone buzzed with a new wave of notifications. The video had caught the attention of a Chicago radio station, WBEZ, which invited us for a segment on love over luxury. Comments on Instagram poured in, each one a testament to the power of our choice. A caregiver in Portland wrote, "Your wedding inspired me to organize a family reunion at my nursing home. Our residents deserve this joy." Another, from a man in Miami, read, "I haven't seen my grandma in a year. I'm booking a flight to her facility in Tampa this weekend." I discovered an online community of caregivers, a Facebook group with thousands of members, sharing stories of including elderly loved ones in celebrations, from birthday parties and hospices to graduations and assisted living. Their messages, filled with gratitude and hope, wrapped around me like a warm blanket, a reminder that our wedding was sparking a movement, a call to honor those often forgotten. But Margaret saw it differently. Her call came at noon, her voice a blade cutting through the morning's warmth. "Emily, this has gone too far," she said, her tone sharp with panic. "I'm getting calls from friends in Chicago, asking why we're in the news for a nursing home wedding. You need to stop these interviews, take down that video. It's humiliating." I stood in our kitchen, gripping the counter, my heart heavy. "Mom, people are inspired by this. They're planning their own events for loved ones in nursing homes. How is that humiliating?" She sighed, her voice cold. "You're exposing our family's private matters, Emily. Photos of Eleanor, of strangers in wheelchair sits, not the image we've worked to maintain." Her words echoed her Gold Coast world, where appearances trumped everything. To her, our wedding was a scandal, not a story of love. Lauren's call followed, her voice trembling with frustration. This is a nightmare," she said, her words rushing out. "My friends in Milwaukee are texting me, asking if I'm the sister who didn't support your wedding. There are comments online calling us heartless. Do you know what this is doing to my reputation?" I closed my eyes, the ache in my chest deepening. "Lauren, you laughed at our wedding, called it a joke. Maybe those comments are seeing the truth." Her voice hardened. "That's not fair. I showed up, didn't I? But now everyone thinks I'm some monster because you had to make this a public spectacle. Tell Lisa to delete the video, Em. Say it was a mistake." I shook my head, though she couldn't see. "I'm not doing that, Lauren. This video is helping people. It's bigger than your embarrassment." The viral wave of our wedding at Willow Creek Nursing Home in Evanston had swept far beyond the quiet streets of Chicago, its ripples touching hearts across the country. At 28, I sat in our Lincoln Park apartment, the city's skyline, a silent witness to a story that had grown bigger than James and me. Eleanor, though frail, lived to see the early days of our work. I visited her at Willow Creek, bringing my laptop to show her the website and read messages from families. Her eyes, bright despite her labored breathing, sparkled with pride. "Emily, you've done something wonderful," she said, her voice soft but clear. "You've reminded people that we're still here, still part of their lives." I held her hand, tears falling as I thought of her 1955 Evanston wedding, her stories of love against all odds. "This is because of you, Grandma," I said, my voice breaking. "You taught me what matters." She squeezed my hand, her touch a quiet strength, and for a moment, I felt her love anchoring me, just as it had when I was a child in Evanston. Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep on a Tuesday morning in December, a month after our wedding. The news came like a soft blow, a mix of grief and gratitude. She'd seen our love, our vows, the movement we'd started in her name. Her memorial was held in Willow Creek's community room, the same space where we'd danced under fairy lights. Residents, staff, and James's family filled the room, their presence a testament to the community Eleanor had inspired. Margaret and Lauren attended, their faces somber but present, a small shift from their earlier resistance. They stood quietly, their Gold Coast polish softened by the weight of loss, and I sensed a crack in their armor, a hint that Eleanor's passing was stirring something within them. The nonprofit grew in the weeks that followed, fueled by Eleanor's legacy. We were invited to speak at a national eldercare conference in Denver, a chance to share our story with policymakers and caregivers. Standing on that stage, I looked out at hundreds of faces, my voice steady as I spoke. "Our wedding wasn't just about us," I said. "It was about showing that love can thrive in the most unexpected places, that our elderly deserve to be part of our celebrations." The audience applauded, some wiping tears, and I felt Eleanor's presence, her courage guiding my words. The conference led to new partnerships, with nursing homes in Colorado and beyond joining our network. The Memory Murals project took off, with residents painting scenes of their lives, from 1940s dances to 1970s road trips, each stroke a celebration of their stories. Back in Chicago, the public's praise continued to grow. A Chicago Tribune article called "Moments That Matter," a revolution in elder care, highlighting our work as a model for inclusion. Families sent photos and videos, from a 90th birthday in a Wisconsin nursing home to a baby shower in an Indiana facility, each one a testament to the movement we'd sparked. But Margaret and Lauren's resistance lingered, though it was softening. Margaret called one evening, her voice hesitant. "I saw the Tribune article," she said. "I didn't realize how many people you were helping." It wasn't an apology, but it was a start, a sign that Eleanor's legacy was reaching even her. Lauren texted, asking about the nonprofit, her tone less hostile. "Maybe I could help with something," she wrote. A small olive branch I tucked away, knowing trust would take time. As winter settled over Chicago, I walked through Willow Creek's garden, where residents had planted bulbs in Eleanor's memory. The nonprofit was growing, but its heart remained in that community room, where love had triumphed over judgment. James and I worked late into the night, planning new events, reading messages from families whose lives we'd touched. One, from a daughter in Denver, stayed with me. "Your wedding gave me the courage to bring my kids to my dad's nursing home," she wrote. "We're planning a Christmas party there. Thank you for showing us how." Her words were a gift, a reminder that our choice, born from love for Eleanor, was planting seeds of joy across the country. And as I looked out at the Evanston sky, I knew Eleanor was smiling, her legacy a movement that would carry her love forward, one celebration at a time. Our wedding, held so my grandmother Eleanor could witness our vows, had become a beacon of love over luxury, with Lisa's video shared over 100,000 times, and the hashtag number, heart over hype, trending nationwide. My mother, Margaret, and sister, Lauren, had begged me to take it down, their Gold Coast sensibilities wounded by what they called a humiliating spectacle. But as I read messages from strangers inspired to honor their elderly loved ones, I knew our choice was more than a wedding. It was the seed of a movement, one that would take root in the weeks after our day at Willow Creek, transforming lives, including Eleanor's, and slowly softening the hearts of those who'd once mocked us. The idea for something bigger came quietly, like a whisper in the chaos of notifications. Emails and comments flooded in, stories of families moved by our wedding to plan their own celebrations in nursing homes. A woman in Madison, Wisconsin, wrote of moving her parents' 60th anniversary to their assisted living facility. A man in Indianapolis shared plans for his daughter's graduation party at her grandfather's hospice. Each message was a spark, igniting a vision in my mind. "James," I said one evening, sitting on our couch, "what if we could help these families? What if we could make celebrations like ours easier for others?" His eyes lit up, his Oak Park practicality blending with his heart. "Let's do it," he said, his voice steady. "Let's create something that keeps this going." And so, in our small Chicago apartment, the idea for Moments That Matter was born, a nonprofit dedicated to helping families plan meaningful events in elder care facilities. We started small, partnering with Sarah Thompson at Willow Creek to test our vision. Sarah, whose warmth had made our wedding possible, was all in. "The residents are still talking about your day," she said, her voice bright over the phone. "They'd love to be part of more celebrations." We brainstormed ways to support families, from coordinating decorations to connecting them with local vendors. Sarah suggested a unique touch, partnering with the Chicago Art School to create memory murals where residents and families painted walls in nursing homes with scenes of their lives' weddings, birthdays, milestones. "It'll give them a sense of ownership," she said, "a way to leave their mark." The idea felt like a gift, a way to honor the residents' stories, just as they'd honored ours with their memory book and quilted arch. Within weeks, Moments That Matter took shape. We launched a website, sharing resources and stories from our wedding to inspire others. Volunteers from Evanston and Chicago joined us, including Lisa, our photographer, who offered to document future events. By mid-November, we'd helped organize over 50 celebrations across Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana birthday parties, anniversaries, even a small wedding in a Milwaukee nursing home. Each event was a thread, weaving a tapestry of connection that stretched far beyond our own story. I'd call families to check in, their voices filled with gratitude. My mom hadn't smiled like that in years. A woman from Madison told me, describing her mother's 80th birthday, surrounded by residents. "You gave us a memory we'll never forget." Their words wrapped around my heart, a reminder that our wedding had been the start of something transformative. The winter light in Chicago was soft and gray, casting a gentle glow over our Lincoln Park apartment as I sat with a cup of coffee, reflecting on the journey that had begun with our wedding at Willow Creek Nursing Home in Evanston. At 28, I carried the weight of a story that had changed lives, sparked by our decision to move our wedding, so my grandmother, Eleanor, could be there, her 1,955 veil on my shoulders, her frail voice a beacon of love. I shared our story, my voice steady as I spoke of Margaret and Lauren's resistance, Eleanor's wisdom, and the slow path to forgiveness. "Healing doesn't mean forgetting," I said, my eyes meeting theirs. "It means choosing love over pride, again and again." The room nodded, tears falling, and I felt Eleanor's presence, her 1,955 Evanston wedding, a reminder that love could triumph over judgment. To honor Eleanor's legacy, we started a memory garden project at Willow Creek, transforming a corner of the nursing home's courtyard into a living tribute. Residents, staff, and families planted flowers, roses, lilies, and daisy seach, one symbolizing a moment of connection. Margaret and Lauren joined the first planting day, their hands in the soil alongside mine, a quiet act of amends. Margaret, usually pristine in her Gold Coast attire, knelt beside me, her fingers brushing a rosebud. "Eleanor would have loved this," she said, her voice soft. I nodded, tears pricking my eyes. "She's still with us, Mom." Lauren, less guarded than usual, helped a resident plant a daisy, her laughter mingling with his stories of 1960s Chicago. Watching them, I saw a glimpse of the family we could become. Not perfect, but willing to grow. Margaret and Lauren began volunteering with Moments That Matter, their skills a surprising asset. Margaret, with her real estate connections, secured donations from Chicago businesses, from floral shops in Lincoln Park to catering services in Evanston. Lauren, a social media savant, redesigned our website, sharing stories of families we'd helped with a warmth I hadn't seen in her before. Their involvement wasn't a full repair trust, was a slow rebuild, marked by awkward conversations and lingering silences, but it was genuine. One evening, Margaret called to share an idea for a fundraising gala, her voice hesitant but eager. "I want to help, Emily," she said. "I see now what this means to people." I listened, my heart softening, knowing her journey was as much about finding herself as it was about us. The Chicago Tribune ran a feature on our nonprofit, highlighting the family's reconciliation as a testament to its mission. "Moments that matter isn't just about celebrations," the article read. "It's about mending bonds and honoring love in all its forms." The story resonated, drawing more families to our workshops, more volunteers to our events. A letter from a woman in Oak Park stayed with me, her words a mirror to our path. "Your story gave me the courage to forgive my sister," she wrote. "We're planning our mom's birthday at her nursing home together. Thank you for showing that healing is possible." Her words were a gift, a reminder that our journey, painful as it had been, was lighting the way for others. As spring approached, I walked through Willow Creek's memory garden, the first buds of Eleanor's roses peeking through the soil. James joined me, his hand in mine, his voice soft. "We're doing something good, Em," he said, his eyes on the flowers. I nodded, thinking of Eleanor's letter, her words urging me to trust my heart. "This is her legacy," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "And ours." The garden, the nonprofit, the workshops. They were more than projects. They were proof that love could heal, that even the deepest wounds could mend with time and effort. Margaret and Lauren's apologies, their volunteering, their hands in the soil, they were steps toward a family redefined, not by Gold Coast appearances, but by the courage to choose connection. Standing in that garden, I felt Eleanor's presence, her stories of her 1955 wedding, her strength in the face of judgment. She'd taught me that love was a choice, one we made every day, even when it was hard. As I looked at the roses, I knew our healing was just beginning, a journey as delicate and resilient as the flowers we'd planted. The viral video of that day, shared over 100,000 times with the hashtag number #HeartOverHype, had inspired a movement, leading James and me to found Moments That Matter, a nonprofit that helped families celebrate in elder care facilities. But the cost of that choice lingered in the strained ties with my mother, Margaret, and sister, Lauren, whose Gold Coast values had led them to mock our wedding as a budget disaster and demand the video's removal. And with James by my side, Margaret and Lauren slowly finding their way, I believed we could build a future where love, not pride, would lead the way. A future Eleanor would have been proud to see. Eleanor's passing in December had left a void, but it also opened a door to healing, a slow and fragile process that would teach me the power of forgiveness, the strength of rebuilding, and the beauty of honoring love in unexpected ways. The first sign of change came at Eleanor's memorial in Willow Creek's community room, where we danced under fairy lights and residents had sung 1960s love ballads. Margaret and Lauren attended, their presence quiet but significant, a shift from their early departure on our wedding day. They stood among the residents and staff, their faces softened by grief, and I saw a flicker of regret in Margaret's eyes as Sarah spoke of Eleanor's joy during the wedding. After the service, Margaret approached me, her Gold Coast poise faltering. "Emily," she said, her voice low, "I owe you an apology. Eleanor's death has made me see things differently. I was so caught up in what people would think that I missed the beauty of what you did." Her words were tentative, not a full reckoning, but a crack in the wall she'd built. I nodded, my throat tight. "It means a lot to hear that, Mom," I said, knowing forgiveness would take time, but feeling a spark of hope. Lauren's apology came later, in a letter that arrived at our apartment a week after the memorial. Her handwriting, usually bold and hurried, was careful, each word deliberate. She wrote, "I was jealous of the attention your wedding got, the way people saw you as brave and selfless. I was ashamed of how I acted, laughing at your choice, spreading rumors. I want to make this right." Reading her words, I felt a mix of anger and relief. Lauren, at 24, had been driven by her need for social media approval, her mockery a shield for her own insecurities. But her letter was a step, a raw and honest attempt to bridge the gap. I showed it to James, his Oak Park steadiness grounding me. "She's trying," he said, his hand on mine. "That's where it starts." I nodded, realizing that healing wasn't about erasing the hurt, but about building something new from it. Inspired by this shift, James and I decided to channel our journey into something bigger. Moments That Matter was thriving, with over 50 events organized in Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana, from birthdays to vow renewals in nursing homes. But we saw a need beyond celebrations, a way to help families navigate the conflicts our wedding had exposed. We launched a family healing workshop through the nonprofit held at Willow Creek, where families could share stories of disagreement and learn tools for reconciliation. The first session, led by a Chicago therapist, drew a dozen families, their stories echoing ours. A daughter whose parents opposed her non-traditional wedding, a son whose siblings judged his choice to care for an elderly aunt. As I stood in the memory garden at Willow Creek Nursing Home in Evanston, the October breeze carried the scent of roses planted in honor of my grandmother Eleanor. At 28, I was a year into my marriage to James, a year since our wedding in that very community room, where Eleanor's 1,955 veil had rested on my shoulders, and her frail voice had declared, "I'm so glad I lived to see this." Writing it was a labor of love, each chapter a reflection on the lessons our wedding had taught me, that love thrives in simplicity, that community is built through shared moments, that courage means choosing what's true over what's expected. I wrote of Eleanor's 1,955 Evanston wedding, her defiance of her mother's disapproval, her letter urging me to trust my heart. "Love is a choice," I wrote, "one we make every day, in the quiet spaces where no one else is watching." The book was my way of honoring her, of ensuring her wisdom lived on. Margaret and Lauren, once our fiercest critics, had become part of this legacy. Their apologies after Eleanor's passing, their volunteering with Moments That Matter, their hands in the soil of Willow Creek's memory garden, they were steps toward healing, a slow rebuilding of trust. Margaret's real estate connections had secured donations for our nonprofit, while Lauren's social media skills amplified our reach. At our anniversary party, they joined us, their presence less guarded, their laughter mingling with resident stories. Margaret pulled me aside, her Gold Coast polish softened. "I'm proud of you, Emily," she said, her voice low. "I didn't see it then, but I do now." Lauren hugged me, a rare gesture, whispering, "You were right to choose Grandma." Their words, though late, were a bridge, a sign that love could mend even the deepest rifts. Reflecting on our journey, I realized the wedding had given us more than a marriage. It had given us a purpose, a community, a foundation built on authenticity. In our Lincoln Park apartment, James and I planned our future, dreaming of a family raised with Eleanor's values: to love fiercely, to honor the elderly, to choose connection over convention. I began sharing advice with young couples, speaking at Chicago community centers and elder care conferences. Plan a wedding that reflects your heart, I'd say, my voice steady. Don't wait to include those who matter most. The perfect moment is now, in the ordinary places where love lives. My words, rooted in Eleanor's wisdom, resonated, sparking nods and tears from audiences who'd faced their own choices between expectation and truth. A call to action emerged from our story, one I shared on social media with the hashtag number Moments That Matter. "Tell us your story," I posted, inviting others to share their meaningful choices, from small acts of love to bold defiances of judgment. Responses poured in, from a woman in Evanston who'd moved her mother's birthday to a nursing home to a man in Oak Park who'd reconciled with his brother after years of silence. Each story was a thread, weaving a tapestry of courage that stretched across the country. A Chicago Tribune feature called our work a quiet revolution, noting how Moments That Matter had redefined celebration, making elder care facilities places of joy, not isolation. Reading it, I felt Eleanor's smile, her legacy, a light that guided us forward. As I stood in Willow Creek's community room that anniversary night, Mrs. Rivera's piano filling the air, I thought of the lessons our wedding had taught me. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up, who celebrate your joy, who stand by you when the world doesn't understand. Love isn't about grand gestures. It's about the quiet choices, the ones that feel right in your soul. And courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act despite it, to choose what matters over what looks good. Eleanor had lived those truths, her 1,955 wedding a testament to love's resilience. Our wedding, mocked by Margaret and Lauren as a budget disaster, had become a story that touched millions, a reminder that the most beautiful moments often happen where no one expects them. The choice to move our wedding from Chicago's Drake Hotel to Willow Creek, defying the scorn of my mother, Margaret, and sister, Lauren, had sparked a movement. Our story, captured in a viral video shared over 100,000 times with the hashtag number #HeartOverHype, had inspired Moments That Matter, a nonprofit that helped families celebrate in elder care facilities. As we marked our first anniversary, the Chicago skyline a distant glow, I realized our wedding was more than a day. I looked at James, his hand in mine, and felt a deep gratitude for the journey we'd shared. Our wedding had been the start, but Moments That Matter, the memory garden, the book, the VR project, they were the continuation, a legacy of love that would outlive us. As we danced, residents clapping around us, I whispered to James, "This is what Eleanor wanted for us." He nodded, his eyes soft. "And it's what we'll pass on." In that moment, under the Evanston sky, I knew our story was far from over. It was a call to others, a challenge to live with heart, to honor love in all its forms, to build a world where every moment matters, just as Eleanor had taught me, just as we'd learned together, one brave choice at a time. It was a legacy of love, a foundation for our future, and a call to others to choose authenticity over appearances, just as Eleanor had taught me. Our anniversary celebration was a return to Willow Creek, where Sarah Thompson had organized a small party in the community room. The space, once transformed with fairy lights and resident-donated flowers, now held tables of homemade treats, Eleanor's apple tart recipe among them. Mrs. Rivera, the former music teacher, played piano, her fingers coaxing out the same 1960s love ballad medley that had filled our wedding with joy. Residents, some new, others familiar faces from that day, greeted us with smiles, their stories of our wedding woven into their own. James and I danced in the same spot as our first dance, his hand warm in mine, his Oak Park steadiness grounding me. "We did something right, Em," he whispered, his eyes reflecting the twinkling lights. I nodded, my heart full, knowing this place, these people, had become our extended family, a community born from a single act of love. Moments That Matter had grown beyond our wildest dreams. In the year since our wedding, we'd helped coordinate over 100 events across the U.S., from birthdays in Seattle nursing homes to vow renewals in Miami assisted living facilities. The Memory Murals project, where residents painted their life stories on facility walls, had spread to dozens of homes, each mural a vibrant testament to lives lived fully. We'd partnered with tech innovators in Chicago to launch a virtual reality project, allowing nursing home residents to attend family events remotely, their faces beaming through VR headsets as they joined weddings or graduations from afar. A family in Denver sent us a video of their grandmother, too frail to travel, watching her grandson's college commencement via VR. Her tears of joy a mirror to Eleanor's on our wedding day. "You've given us a way to stay connected," they wrote, their words a gift that fueled our work. I'd begun writing a book, Love in Ordinary Places, to share the stories of families we'd helped, from a 90th birthday in Wisconsin to a baby shower in Indiana. The book, set to publish next year, would donate proceeds to elder care programs, ensuring Eleanor's legacy reached further. When I look back on the journey that began in my Oakland apartment, the heart of Cheryl beating outside my window, I see a story that started with a single choice and grew into a movement that changed lives, including my own. At 28, I stood on the cusp of my wedding to James, a man whose love was as steady as the Oak Park roots he came from. We'd planned a grand celebration at the Claremont Hotel, with chandeliers, a $5,000 dress, and 250 guests. A vision shaped by my mother, Mrs. From that choice, Moments That Matter was born, a nonprofit that helped over 100 families create events in elder care facilities, from memory murals painted with residents' stories, to virtual reality projects letting the frail join family milestones remotely. Evelyn lived to see its early days, her pride a guiding light before she passed in December, her memorial in Willow Creek's community room a testament to her impact. Mrs. Woodard and Laura, softened by her loss, began to change, offering apologies and volunteering, their hands in the soil of Willow Creek's memory garden a symbol of healing. Our family healing workshops taught others to mend bonds, while my book, Love in Ordinary Places, shared our story, its proceeds funding elder care programs. On our first anniversary, dancing to Mrs. Rivera's piano at Willow Creek, I saw a community that had become family, a movement that had redefined celebration, and a marriage built on authenticity. The lesson of our story is simple yet profound. Love is a choice, one that thrives in the ordinary, in the courage to prioritize what matters over what looks good. Evelyn's 1,955 wedding, mocked by her mother, taught me that true love defies judgment, a truth our wedding echoed as we faced Mrs. Woodard and Laura's scorn. This lesson applies to every life, whether you're 18, planning a future, or 55, reflecting on the past. Choose the people who matter most, not the applause of strangers. Visit your grandparents, call your parents, include them in your milestones now before time slips away. If you're planning a wedding, a birthday, or a reunion, let it reflect your heart, not society's expectations. A backyard gathering, a nursing home party, a quiet dinner, these can hold more love than a ballroom's grandeur. In today's world, where social media and status often dictate our choices, this lesson is a call to authenticity. Share your story, as we did with Moments That Matter, and inspire others to choose connection over convention. Volunteer at a nursing home. Listen to a resident's tales. Plant a garden in their honor. If family conflicts arise, as ours did, seek healing through patience and honest conversation, knowing that love can mend even the deepest wounds. Start small, but start now. Call a loved one, plan a visit, make a moment that matters. Our wedding, once called a budget disaster, became a story that touched millions. Proof that the most beautiful moments happen when we choose love, courage, and the people who make us whole. Evelyn's legacy lives in every rose in Willow Creek's garden, every mural, every family we've helped. Let her story, our story, inspire you to build your own legacy of love, one brave choice at a time. Woodard, whose Gold Coast values demanded perfection. But a call from Willow Creek Nursing Home in Oakland shattered that vision, revealing that my grandmother, Evelyn, who'd raised me after my parents' divorce, had only weeks left due to her worsening COPD. Evelyn, with her sharp mind and frail hands, was my heart. The woman who'd taught me to find beauty in the ordinary through stories of her 1,955 courthouse wedding. The thought of her missing my wedding was unbearable, so James and I made a choice that would redefine our lives. We moved our wedding to Willow Creek, a decision that sparked a firestorm of family conflict, a viral sensation, and a legacy of love that continues to ripple across the country. Mrs. Woodard and my sister, Laura, saw our plan as a betrayal of our family's reputation, mocking it as a budget wedding unfit for Oakland's elite. Their words cut deep, their laughter a sharp contrast to James's unwavering support and Evelyn's tearful joy when we shared our decision. Mrs. Woodard's intervention dinner, filled with articles about venues like the Palace Hotel and Laura's screenshots of real weddings on Instagram, tried to pull me back to their world of appearances. But Evelyn's letter, found among her keepsakes, urged me to trust my heart, and her stories of love against judgment gave me courage. With Sarah Thompson, Willow Creek's activities coordinator, we transformed the community room into a haven of fairy lights, resident-donated flowers, and a quilted arch, while residents like Mrs. Rivera played piano and shared their own wedding tales in a memory book. The wedding day was a triumph, Evelyn's presence a radiant light, though Mrs. Woodard and Laura's grudging attendance and early departure left a quiet ache. The story could have ended there, a beautiful memory sealed in our hearts. But Lisa's 3-minute video, posted with the hashtag #HeartOverHype, went viral, shared over 100,000 times and trending nationwide. Strangers called it a testament to love, inspiring families to plan celebrations in nursing homes, from anniversaries in Wisconsin to graduations in Indiana. Oakland Influencers Real Love Challenge and an online caregiver community amplified our message, while CBS Oakland and The Knot sought our story. Mrs. Woodard and Laura, panicked by the public's praise and their portrayal as unsupportive, begged me to take the video down, their fear of judgment blinding them to its impact. But James's strength and Karen's warmth, his mother from Oak Park, reminded me that our truth was worth defending, a truth rooted in Evelyn's legacy of choosing love over pride.